All right, my friends, we're here taking a look at page 25 again. I know a lot of instructors say you don't have to read it, you don't have to cram it. It's not a question of cramming it. We're professionals. Hey, we are project management professionals, certified associates in project management. We need to know what we're talking about. I don't like all this all over the place, because a lot of instructors, they are all over the place because they haven't trained people to focus on the right stuff. My job is to help you. I've been certified for 17 years. So when I tell you, you need to know this table, take it from me. I'm one of the people who hates all the unnecessary overhead of studying big old books. I'm not like that. But when it comes to what is real and what is honest, I'll just keep it plain. So you got to know it. You got to understand it. And today I'm going to invest time with my friends here in our class in going over page 25 in a different light. We are going to kind of blow page 25 up into a monster of a document because it's going to have a lot of detail. It's going to have like 10 columns and maybe 20 rows at this rate. But let's get started. So you remember the mnemonic? I prefer extra money cash, or I prefer eating mangoes chilled, and that's just the process group. So let's take it all the way back to the basement and start off with initiating, and then planning, and then executing, and then monitoring and controlling. And honestly, just follow along. My recommendation will be just follow along so that we're all on the same page. If you want to open up a document and do the same thing or do it on paper, yeah, by all means. All right, and closing. All right. So we're going to kind of we're going to merge these just so that we have process and the output set. This is a different kind of a map. It's not provided in a PMBOK. It would be so helpful if it was, and that's why I'm gonna work with my friends here to do this. All right, so those are the 5 process groups at the top, and then we have the knowledge areas. I saw 6 Cubans quietly rolling, really puffing. All right, I got to keep some words out because YouTube doesn't like certain words. Okay. Got to keep the words out if I know what's good for me. But you can also use the mnemonic, I saw 6 chipmunks quietly roasting coffee, reading poetry stories. All right, so let's get started with the very first process in integration. So this is integration, right? For those who didn't know, integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder. Okay. So this is taking it up a level, my friends, because in the very first video that I put out this year, I showed how you get the processes. So develop project charter. Let's use a smaller font. Develop project charter. I'll make them all caps. And I will make sure they wrap. Okay. So develop project charter is where you get the 2 main things you get from here. You get a document that authorizes the project. It authorizes the PM to apply resources to the project, and it's simply called a project charter. The other thing that is noteworthy from develop project charter is something we call the assumption log, right? It's a log of assumptions log, and that means it has assumptions and constraints. So in the very beginning, the assumptions that we begin to collect, those assumptions will make their way into the assumptions log. Those constraints will also make their way into the assumptions log. And as the project proceeds, we will continue to populate the assumptions log. So it's not a one-time thing. It's going to be all throughout the project, okay? And I'm going to use a different color just to show that these are outputs, okay? So in this case, we'll kind of try to work by knowledge area, okay? The next thing that happens in integration is develop project management plan. And as I said in a previous video, this is collecting all the plans, putting all the plans together so that all our subsidiary plans become one singular plan. Let's go over here. I'll give you a reminder of something we've talked about in this program. I've shown you the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's website. I've shown you examples of the project management plan, and I want to do that again if I'm able to. See if I can open a project management plan. There we go, project management plan from the CDC coming up. All right, just to put context behind it. All right, here we go. So this is the CDC's project management plan template. And what I mean by developing the project management plan is you are going to be adding all these sections: scope, schedule, cost. You see all these sections here? All of these sections, this is typically what a project manager would need to do in develop project management plan. You need to collate all of the subsidiary plans into this final, as it were, document. Sometimes you could just use a template like this that already has everything built in, so you don't need to have separate documents. You could put everything all in one document, but that's what you're doing. So in the very beginning, this project management plan is going to be somewhat skeletal. It's not going to have a whole lot of meat in it until later on. So project management plan, that's the major output you're getting. For every process, there are things that you should focus on as the major outputs, and there are things that you shouldn't even bother about because they're either repeats items or they're minor in terms of how relevant they are to the process. And really what we're talking about in each section here is just the outputs. We're not doing inputs. That is not as relevant. What we're doing is just the outputs, okay? Going into executing, we have direct and manage project work. And we also have a process known as manage project knowledge. So I'm going to show you what comes out of each one by way of the most relevant stuff. Okay. I might have to make all of these 12 after all. They are quite long. Okay. So direct to manage project work will give you an output known as work, performance, data. It'll also give you, I should say, the more important one is just the good old deliverables, right? And last but not least, it gives you one called the issue log. So what are these? These are quite self-explanatory. The deliverables, product, service, or result. Work performance data are your raw observations on the project that need to be fleshed out eventually. And an issue log is just a log of issues. So let's keep those up there. And as far as manage project knowledge, we'll separate this. And manage project knowledge, the major thing you're getting out of this is the lessons learned register. That is the major thing you're getting out of manage project knowledge, because that's where you're sharing experiences, you're sharing lessons learned on the project, what went well, what didn't go so well, what may need to be done differently. Okay. Now, if questions come up, please ask, because I would love to clarify any of these outputs as we go along. So do you have any questions on any of these outputs that I can clarify for you?
Are you going to share this with us in a minute? Because I can't write and type and keep up at the same time.
I will definitely share it at the end for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just really focus on understanding the content and yeah. But does it make sense so far? What exactly?
I have a question.
Go for it.
For the baselines, they are part of the project management plan?
They are part of the plan. You got it. Exactly. They are. Now, you'll find some reference being made in this document to baselines, but a baseline is really just an original plan that management has blessed, if you will, that management has given a go-ahead to. So in this project management plan, you have subsidiary plans, you have baselines, and there could be other components, which are talked about on page 89 in the PMBOK guide. Okay, good deal. Anything else to explain here, my friends? All right, let's move on. So going into the monitoring and controlling section of integration, we have monitor and control project work. And the second one we have here is perform integrated change control. Okay. So what are we doing in these two? In the first one, monitor and control project work, it's the overall coordination of the project to make sure you are monitoring the project overall in an integrated way, such that if you have scope findings, schedule findings, risk findings, cost you got to combine everything into a cohesive report. So I don't know how you do this on your projects today, but in the worlds that I used to live in, there would be a status report, and the status report would have sections. It would have issues, risks, key decisions, milestones. It will have upcoming things for next week, and it will have some traffic light statusing for cost, traffic light statusing for scope, and things like that. So however you prepare your report, just know that the PMI referred to this, that report that we're talking about, the PMI referred to this as a work performance report. Some work performance reports are very straightforward, and some are quite complex. Some are difficult to put together. Like there's a report I used to put together when I was at Honeywell. Every Tuesday or so, we would meet with management, and that report was an earned value report, pulling SPI, CPI, SV, CV, cumulative stuff, digging deep into programs and projects and down to work packages. So it's a rather complex report, but not every report needs to be that complex. There are other jobs I've done where the reports are so basic, it's just so easy. So it really depends, but PMI refers to them all as work performance report. You're putting all the reports together, all the different knowledge area reporting together to give one cohesive report. Now, this report could actually be customized, and it's customized in such a way that each stakeholder that needs a different spin on the report gets their different spin. But it doesn't happen here. That happens in the managed communications process. So later on, when we talk about managed communications, I'll be mentioning how this work performance report gets customized. All right. So going into perform integrated change control, the major thing you're getting out of this is known as an approved change request. And that just means a change request that has been approved by the change control board, because you would have a change request coming into this process, but coming out of this process, you're going to have an approved change request, or you could have a change request that was not approved, or a change request that is pending. Those are not listed as outputs. Instead, they are alluded to in what we call a change log. So just keep in mind that a change log exists in this process, and the PMI do not expressly list it as noticeably as I would have liked. They kind of put it as an update of the project documents, but be rest assured, there should be a change log as an output from this, because that's what you do as a project manager. You know, you log the changes. I think I've shown you one of these before. Let me show you an example of the change log. Change, I'll show you a couple of change things. So coming into this process, I don't think I'm going to be able to find it, unfortunately. Coming into this process, you have a change request. Coming out, you have an approved change request, but you also have something we call a change log. So let me see if I can go on to the CDC website and maybe find one there. Has everyone seen a change log? Maybe I shouldn't take too much time to do these little inferences. Let's just move on. So just use your imagination. It's like an Excel file. It's got the change requests, and then it's got the numbers. Each change request is given a number in the change log. If we have enough time, we'll come back to this. Okay, let's move on. So we got approved change request and change log. Moving on to closing, we have close project or phase. This is where you're closing out a phase in the project or the project as a whole. You have a final product, service, or result transition. It's just a big old way of saying we're transitioning the deliverable to the customer. They should have just said deliverable transition, right? They use a lot of words sometimes. And then the last thing you got here is final report. And it's just a final report to say, this is the final state of the project. This is what resulted from the project. It was successful or it was not. All right, any questions? Because that's integration for you. And the rest is just going to be as straightforward as that. Any questions or concerns? All right, if there are none, we'll move on to scope. So let's go to scope. The scope is a bit of a beast when it comes to the planning section. When it comes to the planning section, you got plan, scope, management. Who remembers what comes next?
Collect requirements,
Thank you. Collect requirements. What comes next?
define scope,
Well done. Define scope, followed by?
Create WBS.
You got it. Thank you. All right. So we got 4 things here in planning, and I'm going to show you what we get out of each one. Try and separate them. So the first one, we have 2 plans. This is where it gets a little bit tricky because plan scope management gives you 2 plans. The first one is called the scope management plan, and the second one is called the requirements management plan. And while it may look odd, it's actually not, because managing scope and managing requirements could be looked at as kind of related, but they are different. The whole concept of managing requirements is what is heavily focused on in PMI's business analysis guide. And we talk about the requirements traceability matrix that is used to collect the requirements, but that takes us to the next one. The major output of collect requirements, you could say, is a requirements traceability matrix. And the second thing you get out of here is requirements requirements documentation. All right. So all of this, is just from memory. So if someone has the book, the PMBOK, please check. Is it called requirements documentation? What is it called? Do a double check for me, please.
requirements documentation, and requirement traceability matrix.
Thank you. Got it. Cool. All right. So sometimes it's good to just have a double check when you're not sure about this stuff. All right, so we got requirements documentation and the requirements traceability matrix. Let me put this on a different line. Okay, define scope. This is where we get a document known as, I'll just do some adjustments here. Okay. Get it all to align. Okay. So defined scope is where we get something called the project scope statement as an output. So the project scope statement, who remembers what is in the project scope statement?
The description of the work needs to be done,
You got it. It's the definition of the description of the deliverable in detail. And there's two very important things that are here in the project scope statement. We refer to them as inclusions and exclusions. So what is included in the project and what is excluded? In some instances, you actually need to spell it out for some folks. They don't get it, except you spell out this is not in the project. Okay, create WBS. This is where we get our, it's not the WBS. Let me just give you that clue. Who remembers what we get from create WBS?
Work packages.
So work packages are part of this thing, but this thing is actually called a scope baseline. The scope baseline contains the WBS dictionary, and the project scope statement. All three are referred to as the scope baseline. So if you haven't taken note of that, just think about it like this. Let me give you a very quick idea. So the scope baseline, this is part of PMI's Holy Grail, which is why I'm going over it. Scope baseline has got the WBS dictionary, which explains each element in the WBS. And then we have the project scope statement. These three things are in the scope baseline. So when you take a look at the process, create WBS, you got to remember the scope baseline is a major output. All right. So remember, we're in scope. In scope, we have 6 processes, right? So the first 4 are in planning. Then we jump into monitoring and controlling, where we have the last 2. And they are what? Who remembers what they are?
Validate scope and control scope.
You got it. Validate scope and control scope. Who remembers what happens in each one? Well done, Praizion.
Validating scope is when we meet with the stakeholders, so we can so that we can validate the verified deliverables.
Very good. You want to validate the verified deliverable. For those folks who haven't gone that far, when we say verified deliverable, we mean a deliverable that has gone through quality control from our side, from us who are creating that deliverable. So the major outputs you're going to get from validate scope is known as accepted deliverables. And this is where your customer is checking the deliverable. They got to check the deliverable to make sure that it conforms to what they want, to what they requested. So that's accepted deliverables. And then the second one, control scope. What you're going to find, and this is very, very important, what you're going to find in all of the controlling processes, almost all of them, you're going to find 4 things repeating themselves. So I'm going to spell them out once, and I'll just say same as control scope. So the repeat things you see all the time are 1, project management plan updates. You see that all the time from the monitoring and controlling processes, especially those outside of integration, right? Then you see project documents, updates. Then you see change requests. Generally, this is the recurring theme that you're going to see all throughout the PMBOK guide. The final one that you typically see as well is organizational process assets updates. If you understand what these are, then there's no need to cram them or worry about them. But just know the project management plan will be updated. Project documents will be updated. Change requests could be an output, and organizational process assets updates could be an output. And I'm talking about everything that happens from scope all the way down to stakeholder. You generally see these. There might be some exceptions, but this is a general theme. And again, you don't have to cram it. You just need to understand, as a result of monitoring and controlling activities, my project documents, my project management plans could be updated. I could have change requests, and I could have updates to my organizational process assets, which are really documents, templates, things such as that. You could have updates to those. You could also have updates to the records. You know, a lot of the updates we talk about as OPAs, that's really your lessons learned that you see being updated over and over again as you find better ways of doing stuff. And that's it. That's it for scope, you see. So this is the level of detail, the level of thinking that you need to have to make things easier for you, as easy as possible. So I'm hoping that, you know, when I share this with you, you can go put some finer coats of paint on it, and you're just going to get better and better and better. In one of our previous sessions, I showed you a whiteboard that one of my students had, and the whiteboard, what he did was write down the page 25, but at the same time, he also had all of the outputs for every process listed out. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So if you look behind me, you can see he's got a scope. At that time, it was time, that's integration. But you can see on that far end, this other end over here, you can see he's got some red lettering there, like, you know, change requests, work performance reports. He's got stuff showing what was going out and what was going in. And that is the level of thinking that I really need you to have. You know, it just makes it so much easier. It takes away the guesswork. And when you go into the exam, you're a lot more confident, just knowing stuff. All right, let's move on. So going into schedule management, I'll be quicker now. We have plan. Okay, let's see. I think it's trying to help me. Plan, schedule management. We have define activities. We have sequence activities. We have, oops. We have estimate activity durations. And lastly, we have develop schedule. Let me see if I can condense these a little bit more. Okay. Sequence activities. I think I lost some of it. Estimate activity duration. And develop schedule. So if you understand the logic of all of these, the flow, you first of all plan how we're going to manage the schedule, how we're going to build it. Then you define the activities, then you sequence them, then you estimate the durations, and you develop the schedule. So plan schedule management gives you a schedule management plan. Okay. Define activities gives you three things. Gives you an activity list. It gives you what we call activity attributes. And it gives you a milestone list. So an activity attribute just further describes an activity. For example, Phil is a resource on activity 2. Phil's being a resource is an activity attribute. Or we could say the place, the location of performance for this task is New Jersey. Well, New Jersey is an attribute of the activity. That's really what we mean by attributes. You know, we could say activity B is followed by activity C. The predecessor of activity B is activity A. That is also an attribute. predecessors and successors. So they're not as complicated as they sound. All right, let's move on to sequence activities. What we get from here is called project schedule network diagram. And if you've ever used Primavera or Microsoft Project, you've definitely seen some of these features like a project schedule network diagram. If you go to the network diagram view in Microsoft Project, you'll see what this is. All right, let's move on. Estimate activity durations. We have two things of importance here. We have duration estimates and we have basis of estimates called BOEs. All right, any questions so far? We're going to hit the last one, and this is just the project schedule. We also have the schedule baseline, and we also have a couple more things that are important. This is one of the bigger processes. We have the project calendars, and then we have schedule data. Now, there's a lot more stuff we could put in here, but they're not unique. So what I'm trying to do is just put in the unique stuff. Okay. That's a lot of stuff. Any questions about this?
Hey, Phil,
Yes.
the basis of estimates, is that just a justification for the amount of time and the estimation of the durations of each activity?
You got it, Uche, exactly. It's just a justification. Yeah. Good deal.
Thank
All
you.
right. So, you know, we also have the BOEs in cost management. So it's really just either justification for schedule, however long it was, or justification for the estimate, you know, however big or small it was, just to clarify. All right. So we got one more, and we're done for schedule. And that final one is in monitoring and controlling, and it's just called control schedule. And the major thing that is different here is this is where we begin to see forecasts. So here we have schedule forecasts, and that is the major output, schedule forecast. Remember, you can also have all of these regular suspects. So I could take all of these and dump them in there, but no, it's just going to make the table look messy. But just remember these four, you could also have them as additional outputs. Okay. Any final questions before we go over to cost? All right, let's go to cost. So for cost, we have plan cost management, and we have estimate costs, and we have determine budget. Let's make these bigger. All right, so for plan cost management, you're going to have cost management plan. Let's put that there, cost management plan. For estimate cost, you're going to have cost estimates. And like Uche just asked, you would have your basis of estimates as well. And for determine budget, you would have a cost baseline as an output. It's a rather important output at that. You would also have, can someone check this for me? Project funding requirements. That would be another one that is significant. So let me know if you find it. Do you see
project funding requirements?
Awesome. Yeah. You definitely need your project funding requirements. Project funding requirements are just the requirements for project funding. You know, it's one thing to say, I need $12 million for this project, but it's another thing to say, every month I need 1 million, or in month 1, 2, and 3, I need 3 million. And in the remaining months, I need whatever it is. So project funding requirements are the funding requirements for the project. in total and also periodically. You need to give those periodic expectations to your sponsor, to whoever is funding you, right? So that you don't run out of money. Okay, and the final one in cost is going straight on down to monitoring and controlling is control costs, and the output is cost forecast. And cost forecasts are things like your earned value management, your projection about what the future of the project will look like and how it will end up. All right. Any questions on cost? All right, let's go to quality. Quality, we have plan, quality management. The major thing you get out is your quality management plan. And we also have quality metrics. So a metric is the attribute that you are measuring. Don't confuse metrics with measurement. For example, we're using the metric of inches, 100 inches versus inches. Inches is the metric, 100 inches is the measurement. So you'll find the quality control measurements later on in control quality, but for now, you just have the metrics as the output. Okay. All right. Moving on. Oh, I think I got this skewed. Oh. Planning. Okay, I'm sorry. I got to move these. I got to move these over here. Yeah, I got lost in the maze of this enormous document. Okay, so I got to move those into planning. That's better. Okay. Now we're back on track. Okay. And as far as executing, now going into quality. Now we have manage quality. And we have a few things here. We have quality reports. We have tests and evaluation. Can someone confirm for me, is it test and evaluation documents or test and evaluation something else? Can you check?
Documents.
Documents, good, okay. So we have quality reports, we have test and evaluation documents. The quality reports are kind of like the State of the Union address about quality overall. And then the test and evaluation documents are documents that we are going to use in the next process, control quality. So what you see in a lot of these knowledge areas is the outputs of the previous process usually become inputs to the next process. That's just how it works in general, okay? But in control quality, since we're using these test and evaluation documents and we're doing inspection, we're going to get out something that Farouz mentioned earlier. If you were quick to catch it, she said verified deliverables. This is where this comes from, right? A verified deliverable just means that you have checked the deliverable as the performing organization for correctness through inspection. That's one of the things you get. And then you also have something called quality control measurements. And all this is measurements that you make around the inspection. So whether you're measuring Fahrenheit or degrees Fahrenheit, degrees centigrade, meters, feet, whatever it is, whatever that measurement is, you make the measurement to ensure that that deliverable is fit for use and conforms to requirements and so on. So verified deliverables, quality control measurements. I think that's about it. Those are the most significant ones. You're going to find a lot more, but those two would be the most significant ones. What you do with the quality control measurements is you could use them as an input back. Believe it or not, it's got a very interesting relationship But instead of it going forward, you take these and it becomes an input back into manage quality, where you're doing some checks to ensure that your process is sound. Because if you get a deliverable that is unfavorable, you got to use those quality control measurements to check what went wrong. Where's our process broken? Is our process broken? Any questions about quality, my friends? Does it make sense for the most part?
Sorry, I didn't get the test and evaluation document.
Yeah, so the test and evaluation documents are documentation you prepare in advance. So this is what's happening here. In manage quality, you are anticipating we are going to get to control quality. When we get to control quality, we're going to do an inspection, right? And we can also classify some of what we do as testing. And we could say we're also going to do some evaluation, right? So whether it's inspection, testing, evaluation, this is all the kind of the tools and techniques. This is what they point to in control quality. So where you're going to document what you've inspected, where you're going to document what you've tested, it's just the paperwork that will be used to document the results of your inspection. So these are going to be used going in here to do the inspection. And then when you're done, of course, you'll have these already completed. And that will be some of the data that you've got to use for other analyses, which will still come back to here. So these two, there's a feedback loop that could continue depending on how many cycles of testing and evaluation and analysis you do on the actual thing you've created. Okay. All right. Does that make sense, Ferouz?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, let's move on to resources. Another big area. Resources has got two things in planning. So we have, who remembers?
Plan resource management and
you.
estimate the resources of activities.
Thank you. Estimate activity resources. All right. What do we get out of plan resource management that's important? Two things. Who can guess? Every planning process has it.
Resource management plan?
That's one. Thank you. That's one down. And what's the second thing of interest?
Team charter?
You got it. Well done. Team charter. All right. Those are the big two. Okay. And then from estimate activity resources, going back to Uche's question, we have that thing again, right? We have the basis of estimates, but we have, first of all, what we call resource requirements. And then we have those BOEs again, basis of estimates. And in this case, the basis of estimates are just going to tell us what is the basis for saying you want 5 coders. Why so many? Well, they're junior. They're not as experienced as the other people, or whatever the rationale is, or why do you need the backhoe for this long? It could be because what we're working on has terrain that is uncharted. We've never been there before. It has a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what we're going to encounter. Whatever that reason is, you want to put it in there so that whoever is looking at the resource requirements will understand why the resource requirements are whatever they are, high or low. All right. So moving on to executing, we have acquire, develop, and manage. Acquire, develop, and manage. I want you to remember it like this, ADM, right? So what are we acquiring? Acquire what? Who remembers? Okay, resources. Farouz already mentioned develop. Develop what?
Team,
You got it. And manage.
team,
Thank you. Manage team. So what do we get from these three? From acquire resources, we get a couple of things. Actually, get three things. We have, let's just copy this and use the format. So we have physical resource assignments. And we also have project team assignments. And we also have, who can guess what's the last unique thing? You can open up your books and look. What do you think?
resource calendars.
You got it. Now you're getting it. You see, I like the way you stayed away from the repetitive stuff. Exactly. It's resource calendars. And everyone on a project pretty much has a resource calendar. It's a calendar that shows when they're working and when they're not. That's it. Cool. All right. Develop team. We have a couple of things that are not as common here. Can you guess what they are?
Team performance assessment.
You got it. That's the first one. Team performance assessments. Is it assessment or S at the end?
S,
Thank you. And there's one more that is not as common. We should probably add it. Can you guess which one that will be? It's the EEF.
enterprise environmental factors.
Yeah, updates, only because you don't see the updates a whole lot. So that is kind of unique. I know you see EFs in a lot of places, but this is kind of unique. And then as far as the managed team, it's the same EF updates. It's got change requests and some other things, but those are not entirely unique. So I'll just keep the EF updates. You also have EF updates from acquire resources as well. So just be aware that it's there, right? It's not anything so special when you read it. It's really just updates to the employee records, updates to the employee's capabilities, really. But that's it. All right. Any questions about this? Because we have one more in controlling, and that's control resources. And honestly, there's nothing unique from here at all. In fact, I'm inclined to leave it blank because it's not a whole, there's really nothing unique from there. All right. So, I mean, the only thing you'd have would be the same thing as you got here. All of this stuff, all of this minutia. You know, I don't want to overcomplicate it. So just remember, control resources, it has same stuff from validate scope. No need to overcomplicate it. All right, let's go to communications. We have plan, communications management. From here, we have our communications management plan. That is the only thing that you get that is noteworthy. Then we have manage communications. Manage communications. Here we have something called project communications. So all the communications that you've made, memos, reports, whatever can be saved based on your company's retention records, policies, yeah, go ahead and keep it as project communications. But if there's stuff that is classified, of course, you wouldn't do that. It wouldn't be general records. So these are memos, reports, things like that. Last but not least, what is the last process called? Stay away from the landmine.
Monitor communication.
Well done. You stayed away from the landmine. Monitor communications. Monitor communications is where you check to make sure that the plan is working. Again, to be quite honest, there's nothing unique. right? And I'm just going to put nothing unique. Nothing unique. Nothing unique there, nothing unique here. All right, let's go to risk. So risk is a beast. It's an absolute monster. So we're going to get something we formatted to stay away from the formatting troubles. And we'll just use this. And we'll start from the top. So it's plan risk management. What's the second thing we do in risk?
Identify.
Thank you. Identify risks. What is the third thing we do?
Perform qualitative risk analysis.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you. And what is the next one?
Quantitative
Quantitative.
risk analysis.
That piece, you seem to like it. It seems like that is one of the fun parts for you.
Once I decipher between the two, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once you know the difference, it's fun and games. All right. And then the last one is what? In planning, that is.
Plan risk response.
You got it. All right, so you got plan risk responses. Here's the good news. Here's the good news. For these guys, there is the risk management plan over here. No, let's do it. The risk management plan. That is the only output noteworthy from plan risk management. And then from identify risks, we have the risk register and the risk report. And guess what? That's it, because all we're doing from here on out for the entire risk management knowledge area is we're just updating the risk register and the risk report in most of the processes. In quantitative, it doesn't allude to an update to the register. I don't think it does, but just take it like it's just going to be a repeat. All we're going to do is update everything that we've got from here on out. That's really it. So yeah, let's just nudge that down. All right, so from here we have in executing, who remembers what we do in executing?
Implement.
You got it. You implement the risk responses. All right. And I hope you do remember the A team and the easy. You remember those? I just got to always remind you of these because they're really big on the exam. So for plan risk responses, you're doing your A team, and you're doing your easy for the positive risks. So you got to remember avoid, transfer, escalate, accept, mitigate. And you got escalate, accept, share, exploit, enhance. Those are really big as far as risk is concerned. So when you're implementing risk responses, what you're doing is you're taking these and you're implementing them as planned. All right. So to be quite honest, there's no unique output. No unique output, nothing unique, because all we've got is updates. So I could put a different note here. I'll make an exception. I'll put risk register updates, but this is documented under project documents updates. But it's definitely worth noting that it's the risk register because it's such a significant document of project management that I want to make sure you've captured that understanding. Same thing for this. You know, it's the risk register that you're going to be updating in the, what is the final process called for risk?
Monitor.
You got it. Well done. Monitor risk. You got to know which one is the monitor. And yep, it's communications, risk, and stakeholder. Good. All right. Well, we're almost done here. You can see it's not insurmountable. We've only been going for about 45, 50 minutes, so we got plan.
Excuse me, Phil, I have a
Huh?
question.
Go for it.
What exactly does the risk register contain?
So the risk register, wow, remember that big old thing we did a few weeks ago? Have you forgotten? Let's go open it. Let's go investigate. Remember, we did an end-to-end risk register, remember? So I actually put this on YouTube. This is on YouTube as well. So on YouTube, I put this video that we made in class where we, first of all, started with the cause, the risk, and the effect. And then we did the qualitative risk analysis. And then we did the quantitative risk analysis. And then we went into planning the responses, right? I showed you, this is where we use the A-team or easy. We decide how to respond to the risk. And then we also did the monitor risk, and I showed you could keep status and notes. Did that bring back the memory? Did it flood back?
Yes, yes.
Good. Yeah, this is now you're seeing it all come together. And I'm really glad we're doing this because it's hard. And let me just say, you're the first class I've done this with in, I would say ever. Yeah, you're the first class I've actually sat down with to construct it. Most of the time, the students will go back and construct it themselves. But now you're seeing it come together. And again, for those who didn't see it, you see the board behind me. This is from a student of mine. I've always told students to do this. So he bought this big old whiteboard, and not only did he put the process names, but he put the outputs. He went a step further. He was hardcore. You don't have to do this, but he also wanted to put the major inputs. You don't have to go that far. Just the outputs that we've got on the screen now, trust me, this will be the most you need to really understand everything you need for predictive. This is it. After this, it's really just knowing what each thing contains. Like Farouz asked a great question, what is in the risk register? You got to know what is in each of these documents. Good. All right. So let's move on to plan, procurement, plan, procurement.
Was there a notable output for the monitor risk?
Yeah, so for monitor risk, I've just put project documents updates because to be honest, it's really nothing unique. It has, oh, thanks for bringing that up, Stacy. So let's go back. There's one more thing that is part of the recurring themes of monitoring and control. And I was wondering what it was. I don't think I meant to put OPA updates, even though you could find those. I believe the one I really meant to put was work, performance, information. Oh yeah, thank you for asking that question. That's another one of, you have a way of knowing what would hurt me if we had finished this recording, like you did last week. This one is so important. I cannot stress how important it is to understand that work performance information comes from every single process in monitoring and controlling outside of integration. You're always going to have work performance information over and over again in all of the knowledge areas: control schedule, control cost. You're going to have that work performance information all the time. So it is very relevant. Yeah. So just keep that in mind, even though it's not unique in the grand scheme, but it's definitely one we want to put there. And the reason why I remembered it, Stacy, is you got in monitor risks, you've got an input, work performance data, but you've also got another input that's unique, the work performance reports, because you want to look at the reports and see if you can find risk trends. So this process is one of a unicorn process where you got all the W's, and all the W's are here. You got the two W's coming in: work performance data, work performance information, and I beg your pardon, work performance data, work performance reports, and the output is work performance information. It's probably worth putting it here since I had mentioned it. So I just put work performance information. This is one of the more unique ones. Thanks for the question. Great stuff. All right. Okay, let's move on. So plant procurement management is a beast of a process. I know it looks like it's just where we're doing make or buy decisions, but it's not. There's a lot here. So we have the procurement management plan. We're going to make this bigger. We have the procurement management plan. We have procurement strategy. We have the ICE, independent cost estimates. So imagine you're working on a procurement and you are not 100% sure about the bids that could come back. You could go to an independent source for them to estimate what you're looking for, and then you can measure up the estimates from the vendors with this independent cost estimates. We also have an output called make or buy decisions. And this is really just a decision to make something or buy it, depending. What else? We're going to have to take a little sneak peek because there's 3 more things that could be kind of strange. We have change requests, I believe, which is very strange to have here. What else? We have procurement. Can someone take a look and see we have procurement documents, so procurement documentation?
Procurement document updates,
As the
procurement statement of work.
yes, the procurement statement of work is one of them. Thank you. Procurement statement of work. And that is a high level narrative of what the customer wants. So let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need a couple, we got 6, but I think we need a couple more of the unique ones. So what else do you see there that looks, we've never
Bid
seen this
documents.
before. Say that again?
Bid documents,
Thank you, the bid documents, yeah.
and
Bid
then
documents.
source selection criteria has not been mentioned yet.
You got it, source selection criteria. This is the most notorious process for unique outputs. It has 7 unique outputs, and then change request is not unique, but hey, this is planning. So I felt I would call this out here because you don't often see change requests in planning, but here you do. So go on down and read. Why do we have change requests? Well, think about it. If you do plan procurement management and you realize, oh, we're not able to get a vendor who can do this, we need to change something on the project, you know, or maybe you do market research and you realize, oh, we can't do this. You might have to back out or change something. And that's all I'm calling your attention to in this one. So it's a lot of documents. It's not to cram them, but it's really just to know what they are. So does anyone have any questions on any of these documents?
The independent cost estimate.
Yeah, so those are just estimates that you would approach from a third party. So let's say I'm the buyer, you are the seller, and I'm expecting you to bid for 5 million. But when you bid for 12 million. I'm like, I'm expecting a 5 million around that bid. Why am I getting a 12 million bid from a vendor? So I go to Shauna, and Shauna is my independent cost estimate source. She's a third party who will take a look at my scope of work and say, this is what you can expect the bids to be, or this is why the bids are this way. So she will provide the rationalization. She'll give me the independent estimate. When I see her estimate, I'll know if yours is in line. If she's telling me, yeah, it should be around the region of 12, then okay, good. But if you say, no, you're right, Phil, it should be in the region of 5 or 6 at most, then I need to understand, okay, where did Firuz get it wrong? Where is she seeing the scope of work differently? So it's just an independent estimate from a third party. And it happens all the time, you know, in a lot of the bigger kind of projects where you want to make sure that the bids you're getting back are not jacked up. They're not, you know, people aren't overestimating, putting too much thought into it where too much thought doesn't need to be put into it. Maybe it's just something simple, but they're overcomplicating it or they don't understand the scope. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. Yes.
Awesome. Very good. All right. Let's move on to the final two. So we have conduct, procurement. And here we have a very important one, agreements. Agreements, and this is like contracts and anything that signifies you've got a deal, right? We also have selected sellers. And we also have, there's one Stacy mentioned, was it procurement documents updates or something like that?
That's project document up, project management plan updates or project document updates.
Okay, there's no procurement documents or, okay, maybe not. Okay, so I believe it's just these two that are the unique ones. Agreement, selected sellers, that should be it. Okay, or do you see anything else noteworthy? Anything that says procurement? No. All right.
No, all the other ones have been mentioned and other ones passed.
Gotcha, thank you. Let's do the last one, control procurements. So in control procurements, I think this is where we have the strange one you mentioned, which is procurement documentation updates or something like that.
Yes, procurement documentation updates.
Thank you. So we have closed procurements. That's one. And the second one, we have procurement documentation updates. This is a long story that you can go read up on your own, but any documents in procurements, we could update them here. That's the summary of it. And there's so many parts, but honestly, if you're going to look at the bang for your buck, it's too much. So don't go rabbit trail into these procurement documentation updates. Just know that any documentation that is relevant from procurement could be updated here, but that's it. Okay. Any questions about procurement in general, how things work? Does it make sense? Okay. Let's head on down to the stakeholder area. So we have, what is the very first process in stakeholder management?
Identify.
I couldn't fool you on that one. Thank you. Identify stakeholders. What is the major output?
Stakeholder register.
Got it. Stakeholder register. Awesome. And as far as the next process, what is this one called?
Plan, stakeholder engagement.
You got it. What is our major output?
The stakeholder engagement plan.
You got it. Stakeholder engagement plan.
Why
That's
can't it all be that easy?
it. Okay, here's the good news. The next one,
Manage stakeholder engagement.
thank you. And honestly, there's nothing unique.
No.
Nothing unique. All right. And as far as the final process, what's it called?
Monitor stakeholder engagement.
Okay.
Just like that song. Nothing unique. I'm Henry VIII. I am. Second verse. Save it.
Oh, funny. Okay. Well, you definitely get the idea. You got your 5 process groups, your 10 knowledge areas, your 49 processes, and all of the unique outputs. If you go over this video again and again, it will stick. But I want us to just kind of look at the notes that we've made. I'll be sending this to everyone in this class. Let me know if you have questions on any of the outputs, because if you don't, we're done. I will not revisit this topic this way for a long time. I'll just tell people, go watch the video. So any questions about anything in the PMBOK guide? anything predictive, because honestly, I'm done with, I've had enough of predictive for today. And for the,
For the purpose of the test, will they just flat out say what is an output of managed stakeholder engagement, or how would they word a exam question?
yeah, so a question could say you are doing XYZ. What would you expect as an output? And I'm talking more about the CAPM exam. The PMP exam would say you are a project manager working with a team on blah, blah, blah. You are in the process of doing this. This happened. They always throw a wrench in it. So for CAPM, it's usually a straightforward, you're doing this. What do you get out, or what comes next? For the PMP, it's like you're doing this. This and this is a situation currently. This happened. What should the project manager do? It could say, what do you do next? It could say, what do you do first? So having this knowledge is so important. However they dress up the question, you're going to be ready for them, because you're going to know where you are, what came before this and what happens next. One of my students, he said it's like being thrown out of a helicopter in the jungle and being able to have a GPS that you use to find your way back. So if the question said you're project manager on a project, you're in the middle of ensuring there's no scope creep. What happened before this? Well, you're in control scope. What happened before this? In scope, likely validate scope is what came in the order of things. Or maybe they don't make it that simple. Maybe they give you control quality or something else. But you need to know where you are. The bottom line is, where am I? What could I have just done? What am I likely doing? What tools and techniques might I have used? Or if they give you a problem, which process am I in, and which tool and technique would I use to solve the problem? But they're not going to call them tools and techniques. They don't use that language very much, especially on the PMP exam, and even on the CAPM exam of 2023 that they're yet to change to. You're not going to find that language very much, because remember, they're moving away from the 6th edition references. So when they put it in the exam, they're not going to call it 6th edition stuff very much. They could call it methods, models, or artifacts, or something else. But as long as you know what you're doing, this is why I'm a stickler for this page. As long as you know what you're doing as a project manager, and you know what you're getting out of the process, you cannot be fooled. You can't be fooled. As George Bush said, I'll never be fooled again. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, I'll never be fooled again. You ain't gonna fool me, PMI. No way. So know your table, and it will be a happy experience on the exam, whatever the exam you take, whether PMP today, PMP, whenever they change it, this isn't going away. And as though PMI wanted to underscore that it's not going away, when you go to PMI's website, what do you find glaring at you? Process groups, a practice guide, because they knew that the 7th edition was not enough to sustain the community. So they are marketing process groups, a practice guide. When you go to their website, case in point, you go to their website. When you scroll down a little bit, the first thing you see is process groups, a practice guide, buy today. Why? Because this stuff is in there. All the stuff I covered today is in process groups, a practice guide, published in 2022. Still relevant. Doesn't get any better than this. Process group is still there. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see additional languages coming in spring 2023. I think PMI finally listened to what I said. Don't reinvent the wheel. Use what works. It works. It's here to stay. All right, my friends, let me go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you for letting me do this. All right, my friends, so to round this up, you've seen it all, but I know some of you are lacking in your PMP prep because, to be quite honest, not every course goes as deep. You need to be in one of these programs with me. I want to direct you to where to go, my friend. If you want to join our next session, which is for the PMP, and it's a kind of challenge. I'm giving people 3 weeks to get their act together, right? But they're going to be with me for 3 weeks continuously. We're going to be going through content. go on down to this website. It's hpmexam.com. Check out the info. Just 3 weeks, 3 weeks. Come learn and come be challenged so that you can get certified as soon as possible. For those of you that are CAPMs, you just need to go on down to projectmanagementdoctor.com/CAPM live, and you'll be able to find when our next CAPM exam training is. CAPM live. Right now, we don't have any scheduled in February, but beyond February, you want to keep checking projectmanagementdoctor.com/CAPM live, and you'll be able to join our course. And for 2023, we are going through the entire syllabus for the new exam, the exam that PMI has announced is changing. All right, thank you very much. Talk to you soon.